Hello everyone, it's Jeff again, behind the camera once again, making a video here. And I've been needing to make this video for a little while now. I've been inspired by people like Boston Rob, who showed concert tickets in his videos of shows that he's been to. Because in the heyday of my concert going, which was mostly the 90s, I kept all my ticket stubs, and back then in the 90s you still had newspapers who still had music critics and concert reviewers. So when big shows would come through Chicago, you would have articles previewing the tour, and oftentimes you would have a concert review the next day that you could read in the newspaper. So I cut out a lot of those articles and put them along with the ticket stubs into, this is just an old photo album, and just to keep some memories of the show. As time goes by, this has become a little more valuable in helping me remember exactly who I saw and what and where, and reminding myself about it a little bit too. It may seem kind of weird and OCD, I know. It's the kind of person I am, to a mild degree. So I thought it might be interesting to show the VC a lot of this stuff, and there's some interesting things in this book too, which we'll get to as we go along. There's a lot of repeats because I saw certain bands many times that we'll just skip over, so it's not like I'm going to be micro-analyzing every single stub, but I think there's some things that people will be interested in. So I'm going to open this, and of course the very first concert I ever went to was to see Yes. This was during their Union tour, which Rick Wakeman famously called the Onion Tour because it made him cry every single night, every time he hears the Union album. But, yeah, this was very first show I went to in 1991 at the World Music Theater, which is one of the big sheds out in the Chicago suburbs, and it's been renamed probably a dozen times, but back then it was still called the World Music Theater. And, of course, not too long after that, I saw the Moody Blues at a place called Poplar Creek, which is no longer around. And of course, here's a little, the first of the newspaper articles that I was cutting out. And then the first time I saw the Allman Brothers was also at Poplar Creek the very next night after the Moody Blues. I went back to back that weekend in 1991. 91 and 92 were probably the busiest years that I've had in concert going. And when you look at the ticket prices, you know, this one was $24.50, but you also got to see Little Feat and the Radiators, so it was really a much bigger show, a much longer, almost all-day event type thing. And then this was just a newspaper article, which I ended up having to make a copy of because I couldn't get the newspaper. And here was the review of the show the next day. Basically, everybody seemed to like it. NRBQ, that's one of the bands that you'll see me passing over a lot. First time I saw them was at the Park West in the fall of 91. And then here is Jethro Tull when they came through later that year with here's the ticket at the Chicago Theater right around Thanksgiving of 91. So that was a good show. The Chicago Theater is a great place to see a show. And of course, there's still positive reviews from the show here. Then we get to something interesting. I went to see Coco Taylor at a place called Fitzgerald's, which is like a roadhouse type of place. ticket here. The show didn't start till 10 p.m. And because I was at the front of the stage, I was able to grab the set list from the show, complete with footprints and everything. So that's that's the show that Coco and her band played. I've got several more set lists to come. Once I started going to these shows, and I would end up working my way to the stage, which isn't that hard because I'm a big fat guy, so I can just bull my way through anyone. I'd get to the front of the stage, and a lot of times I would see set lists on the ground just getting stepped on and crumpled up, so I would start grabbing them. So I've got probably 4 or 5 more here to show you. We move on to 92, which is probably my busiest year of concert going. I saw John Mellencamp. This was during the Whenever We Wanted tour. And that was at the Rosemont Horizon, which is now called the Allstate Arena. And that was a pretty good show, as I recall. And then here's the concert review with sometimes they would run stock pictures. Sometimes they would actually send a photographer to take a real picture of the show. And then on Leap Year Day in 1992, I went to the Alligator Records 20th anniversary concert, which, as you can see in the picture here, is Lonnie Brooks and his son Ronnie Baker Brooks, Albert Collins, the Iceman. Who else played in that show? Little Ed and the Blues Imperials, Katie Webster, and Elvin Bishop. And this was the set list from Elvin Bishop's set at the Alligator Records 20th anniversary concert. So I was able to grab this off the stage when he was done. See, there's the ticket. Only $17.50. This was at the Vic. Ticket prices are astounding compared to what they go for today. And then there is a review, and there's a picture of Katie Webster during her set on that show. That was a great set. I remember the show very well. This was one of the better shows that I was at. And here is, I saw Adrian Belew at the Vic. And then below that, the Allman Brothers again. Like I say, they usually generated a lot of ink and newspaper space, which was good for me because it gave me a lot to read about and cut out and collect. So that was their show in 1992. Blues Traveler was the opener. And then I saw Emerson, Lake and Palmer when they reunited in 1992. This was a picture of them in the 70s and then a picture of them in the 90s. Of course, Carl Palmer is the only one left out of this trio, which is really quite sad. They reunited and they put an album out called Black Moon, which I couldn't even tell you one song from. And here's the concert review with an actual photo from the show. I don't think the concert reviewer really liked ELP very much. And then, of course, here's Jethro Tull again at the Riv with another review. Here's Dr. John. I saw Dr. John with the Dirty Dozen Brass Band opening at Buddy Guy's Legends. That was a great show. The fall of 92. And then one of my all-time favorite shows that I've ever been to was Neil Young. This was for the Harvest Moon Tour. So it's just him by himself with a circle of acoustic guitars around him. And actually, this picture is in the liner notes, I believe, for the Dreamin' Man album, which is kind of hard to get. It's part of Neil Young's archives, but it's really tough to get on vinyl. But these are just a long article on Neil. There's a picture of him with Crazy Horse during the Ragged Glory era. Yeah, this, like I said, these are very long articles. And then there's the ticket. That was at the Chicago Theater, and I don't know if I've told this in a video or not, but I know I've told it to people. This was the only time I ever saw the Chicago Theater perfectly quiet during a show. Neil had him in the palm of his hand, and I swear to God, you could hear a pin drop while he was playing a song. It was amazing. It was amazing. And then there's another review. And then we move on to Buddy Guy. I've seen Buddy Guy many times. This was the first time in 1992 at Legends, which is his club, for $12. How can you beat that? That is a deal. Even in 1992, that was a deal. So, and then Ministry. We went to see Ministry with Helmet and Sepultura in a triple bill at the UIC Pavilion. They never ripped the ticket, so that's kind of cool. So I got a complete ticket here. I just showed it to them, and they just let me in. They didn't rip it. So that was nice. I think I have a few like that in here. And there's Al Jorgensen. And then after that, I saw Buddy again with Junior Wells. They released several albums in the 70s as a duo. There's the newspaper article, and then here is a picture from the show. That was a great show. His club was packed, but they did a lot of good stuff. I remember I was student teaching in 1993 when this show happened, and it was on a Tuesday night, and I went to it, and of course, the show didn't start till 9, so that means they probably didn't hit the stage till about 10. I didn't get home till probably 2 or 3 in the morning, so I had to regroup the next day, trying to teach freshmen and sophomores English, but that's a totally different story. There's no ticket for this show, but I've got a set list for it. It's for Duke Robillard. If you don't know who that is, he is a blues guitarist, obviously. He played in a band called A Roomful of Blues, and he briefly played with the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and that was at Fitzgerald's. And this show was memorable not only because of the set list, but the room was only about half full. So it was great. Everyone was able to sit, except for those who wanted to dance. And it was just a great show, and he seemed to really put a lot into it. So that was on April 24th of 1993. And it was a 2-page set list. There's that, and then there's that. So you can see all the songs that he played if you're a fan of Duke, which, if you look him up on YouTube, I'm sure you can find some of his music. He's really good. And then over here, I promised my new VC friend Luke that I was going to tell him about Warren Zevon. That's Warren Zevon's guitar pick, or one of his guitar picks. I saw him at the Park West. It was just him, a solo concert with guitar and a harmonica. And he played a synthesizer during Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner. But it was a great show. Park West is a great room to see a show in Chicago. And I was at the front of the stage again with my then girlfriend, and I was probably arm's length away from Warren Zevon while he was playing. And I remember he seemed to be having trouble with his monitor, so he kept like kneeling in front of it and asking us if we could hear, the sound coming from it, because I guess he had trouble hearing it, and we said it sounded just fine. So right in the middle of a show, he's playing with the studio monitor that he's says he can't hear. But in the middle of one of his songs, his pick just went flying, and I was able to catch it, so I stuck it in the book. I love Warren Zevon. I miss him greatly. Wish he was still around. And then once again, here's another Allman Brothers show. Blues Friday. It says with very special guests. The Kinsey Report played there, and Albert Collins. They opened for the Allman Brothers Band. And then here is Little Ed and the Blues Imperials. I mentioned them a little bit earlier. They are a good time boogie woogie blues band for only $8. That is a good time, let me tell you. Guaranteed. And then here is Iggy Pop. Saw him in 1993 for the American Caesar album. He was touring behind that. And there is a concert review there with a picture of Iggy, shirtless as usual. And there's another. There's two newspapers in Chicago, and for certain shows you'll get a review from both papers, so that's why there's more stuff to talk about and read. And then this one here is another time we saw Dr. John. This was at the Cubby Bear right across the street from Wrigley Field in January of 1994. And let me tell you, that's probably the coldest concert I've ever been to. I remember I had an old 84 Monte Carlo, and it was probably 5 or 10 below, and the wind chill made it feel like, 20 or 25 below. And the room was still full. I mean, he still drew the crowd, even in the cold, and I remember him commenting to us. He didn't know how smart we were coming out, but he was going to make it worth our while for doing it. And I remember after the show was over, man, my car barely started. I mean, it was so cold. I was a little nervous to wonder if I was going to get home. And then here's another time I saw Duke Robillard again, with John Hammond as the opener at Fitzgerald's. NRBQ again. I love NRBQ. They are a good time no matter what. They were at the Cubby Bear. And then this is the first time I saw Morphine at the Double Door for $10. Man, that was a good show. And sure enough, I got the set list from that show too. So these were all the songs that Mark Sandman and the rest of the guys played. Very easy to grab, since the stage isn't very high off the ground, and the Double Door is a very tiny club. Here's Joe Jackson in 1994. There we go, here's the ticket. That was at the Bismarck, which was a beautiful hotel ballroom. That was a very, very nice place to see a show. I've never seen any other show like it in a hotel ballroom of all places. It's kind of weird, but cool. And then here's the preview. There's review with a picture of Joe there at the piano. Then in 1995, I saw Bob Mould solo at Metro. As you can see in the picture, it's just him with a guitar. That was a good time too. And it's nice having all these articles because it helps you, like I said, helps you remember. Then in May of 95, I saw Al Cooper at Buddy Guy's Legends. And here's the set list. That's what Al and his band played. It's very cool. This was right, he was sitting on a piano bench playing the organ, and when the show was over, this piece of paper went flying. So I walked up and grabbed it, and security was looking at me kind of funny, but I just showed them what I grabbed, and they let me go. So, and then here's X. They did an acoustic show. And then Dred Zeppelin. I know David Michaels talked about Dred Zeppelin. Andrew from Tales from the Crate, I know he's talked about Dred Zeppelin. I'm a big fan of these guys, and watching them is just a blast. Their concerts are just so much fun. And the lead singer, his name is Tort Elvis. He's a overweight Elvis impersonator. Was throwing these cards out in the audience, and I happened to grab one. So I threw it in the book. And then here is the first time I saw David Bowie. He toured with Nine Inch Nails. This was for his album called Outside. And of course, this being David Bowie, huge star, he generated a lot of newsprint. This was a very long article. As you can see, showing pictures of Bowie from the past. There's the ticket. These were lawn seats. And as the headline says, he was not at his best. He was pretty sick. And from what I recall, he only sang a couple songs and then he left. He couldn't go on. So this was more of a Nine Inch Nails show because they ended up coming out and playing some more after Bowie had to bow out. So that was a little disappointing, but still, it was Bowie. That was cool. So Rusted Root, another untorn ticket, which is always cool to have. And then the closest I've ever been to seeing the Kinks, this was Ray Davies doing a solo acoustic show at the Apollo Theater in 1996. Probably never see the Kinks again, but it was nice to at least see Ray play at a very small theater.